Morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting in order for the Corporation of the Township of Plymouth, January 21st, 2026. And I'll start with roll call. Councilor Spillis. Present. Councilor Bailey.
Here.
Councilor Hurst. Present. And Councilor Goya. This will begin our moment of reflection. There any question? Confirmation agenda, please, Ms. Hartbox.
That council approves the January 21st, 2026 agenda and addendum as circulated, and that council approves the addition to the agenda as follows. And it's 6.1.4 questions received from council and the responses provided by staff.
Okay, mover, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spillis, any questions or comments on that? No, all in favor? That's carried. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest today? I got one. Sorry, the WDD main port, as I was previously declared, so my property is immediately adjacent to that proposed development. So I will declare pecuniary interest on that, and staff to print me off the form and we complete it before the end of the meeting. Thank you. Sorry, anyone else with a pecuniary interest? Okay. All right. Are we going to close? Read the recommendation, please.
That council should go into closed session under section 239 of the Municipal Act for the purpose of a confidential report regarding advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and that's the establishment of a regulatory bylaw. Confidential report of a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and that's in relation to an open road allowance, and then the confidential minutes from previous closed meetings.
Who moved this? Councilor Bailey, Councilor Hurst, all in favor? It's carried. Closed. Welcome back. Smith Fire System resolutions coming up to close.
Yes, the council moves into open session at 10:29 a.m.
Can I get a move for that, please? Councilor Bailey, Councilor Hurst, all in favor? Carried. Next one.
The council receives the confidential report regarding advice that's subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose in relation to the establishment of a regulatory bylaw. Confidential report of proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and that's in relation to an open road allowance. And confidential minutes of previous closed meetings, and that staff proceed as directed.
Can I get a move for that, please? Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spillis, all in favor? It's carried. All right, next we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, which the next item that we'll move to our delegations, and I'll welcome. See, do we need more chairs? Just 3 or there's 4 at least? Maybe more chairs.
We can be okay with 2 chairs. Yeah, that's totally fine.
Can't speak from the gallery.
Okay, well, maybe I can get 3 chairs.
Of course.
We've done that before, so we'll, yeah. We can get 4 chairs. It's easier if you sit here than be engaged from the gallery. Come on down.
Thank you.
Stick me in here.
Would you be able to turn on screen sharing? Yes.
Morning. Steve,
Morning.
we'll give a round of introductions.
Sure. Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of council. My name is Neil DeRuyter. I'm a planner with MHBC Planning. With me today are Steve May and Adrian Samard from CBM, also Yara Almaty from MHBC. And we're happy to be in front of council today and talking about these applications. And I understand that we're going to be starting with the Sephardic pit first. So Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, we did do a brief presentation and happy to run through that and then answer any questions that that you may have.
Go for it.
All right. I'm gonna borrow your- these guys. Okay, so, before we start on, specifics on the Safari Pit application, I just wanted to kind of introduce or just discuss a little bit about what CBM does in the community. We are a division of St. Mary's Cement Canada. We've operated in Puss Lynch since the 1960s. So we do have a history here. We obviously supply high quality aggregate close to market to assist in the construction of homes, schools, hospitals, roads and bridges. We've supported a variety of community initiatives here in Puss Lynch. Some of which are, let's not show them there, but friends.
Go to the next slide.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, we'll give you that key.
Sorry.
I thought you were still doing your introduction, so.
Oh, no.
No, that's not.
I-
It's like you, sorry.
Yep. But in any case, community is very important to us and it will continue to be important. These are some of the things that we are involved in. Friends of Mill Creek, we, made donations to the Puss Lynch Public School, the Green Legacy Tree Nursery we work with. We plant numerous trees every year in Puss Lynch. We're actually going to be hosting a community open house, this fall, summertime frame. More to come on that. We've done work with Sunrise, the Optimist Club, the Aberfoyle Fall Fair with the Ag Society. We've done donations to the Danish Place and the Puss Lynch Fire Department. So we do get involved. We will continue to get involved more and more, and we really encourage the community to reach out to us. We are local. I'm a local Puss Lynch resident myself, and community is very important to us. Next slide, please. Yep. So a little bit more on CBM. One of our major initiatives and that's very important to us and as part of our process is rehabilitation. So this just lists, this slide lists some of the positive after uses that are done with rehabilitation. And again, we have a lot of sites in Puss Lynch that we can certainly provide tours on as to the great work that we do. But some of the after uses are natural environment, agriculture after use, and employment lands after use. So these are some of the sites associated with each use, just for your information. And that's really all I have right now.
Next slide, please. So just a little bit about the Safari Pit application. So in late November, applications were submitted to amend the township zoning bylaw, as well as the county official plan amendment to permit a below water pit for a property located on Concession Road 7. So we've outlined the property in red there. It's comprised of two areas. There's a hydro corridor that bisects the two areas that's shown in the middle. The Hydro 1 property is immediately to the north of this site, and then immediately east of the site is the location of the future Highway 6 bypass. A license application was also submitted to Ministry of Natural Resources at the same time. The licensed area is around 27 hectares with an extraction area of about 21 hectares. The maximum annual tonnage limit that's being proposed is 1 million tons. This operation is similar to some of the other sites within the Aberfoyle known as a feeder pit. So essentially no on-site processing or washing. Materials are extracted and then hauled to the McNally pit. So we tried to identify there on with the dotted red line in terms of what that haul route would be. It's essentially trucks running back and forth from the McNally pit to this site where materials are extracted and sent there for processing. Next slide, please. We just want to include the conceptual rehabilitation plan, and this is what we've included within the submission. And certainly, this is something that will be open for review and discussion and comments, but the rehabilitation concept includes 2 lakes. There's wetland features created, and then woodland areas as well that will be planted next to the woodland immediately to the east of the site. And then there's an area just abutting the hydro corridor that will be used for a pollinator plot area. And then the portion that fronts the site at Concession Road 7 where you see the little, there's kind of a little area that's sticking out in that yellow or tan shade. That would be backfilled back to grade so that it would allow for future opportunities, whether it's residential development or other forms that could be appropriate in the future. Next slide, please. Just to quickly summarize the township zoning bylaw amendment application and what it is. It's proposing to rezone the agricultural zone to the extractive industrial zone. A key thing, no portions of the proposed extraction area located in the natural environment zone. So there are no changes needed to the natural environment zone. There are wetlands on site and adjacent to the site as well as woodlands. And the proposal is to have a setback of 10 meters from those features. Next slide, please. So the applications that were submitted, the studies that have been provided with these applications are those that are in accordance with the Aggregate Resource Act, as well as those dictated in the county's official plan. Both those applications right now are in the process of being reviewed for completeness. So I would note that Ministry of Natural Resources is also still reviewing it for completeness. They have not yet deemed the application complete. On the next steps, just because I think it's helpful just to understand, where we're at in the process is for the Planning Act applications, and this includes the county official plan amendment. A decision on completeness is required first before the applications are then formally circulated by the township and the county. The applications are sent to agencies and peer reviewers for comment, and then there will be public consultation and input. We'll also be going to PDAC, and then there's going to be a public information held by the township. On the ARA application, very similar process. Big difference being CBM as applicant will then undertake and administer that consultation activity. So once M&R decides that the application is complete, CBM can then begin consultation. So that'll include a 60-day comment period. Notices will be sent to the public, review agencies and Indigenous communities. As part of this, CBM is required to attempt to address any comments that they receive through that process. CBM will likely use a project website that we've already got established for the Aberfoyle area to make sure that information is posted online. And certainly as we've indicated to staff, information. So I guess in summary and certainly appreciate staff bringing forward the report. CBM supports staff's recommendation that this application be deemed complete. I think I would just add that importantly in the motion, you're not being asked to take a position on this application. You're not saying you're good with it. You're not saying you don't have concerns. We fully expect there will be comments and concerns. This allows us to take it to the next step to work through that with the township and the public on any comments and concerns that are received. So certainly we are more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thanks, Neil. I don't know, did they introduce?
Oh, Steve May.
Yeah, I was distracted, so I wasn't sure if you mentioned it or not, because the staff and.
I can't forget Steve.
It was mentioned.
Yeah, well, I didn't hear, so I wasn't sure, I knew who you were, but I just, okay, excellent, so we'll just turn it over to council. Councilor Spillis.
Yes, the property, do you want it outright or are you leasing it from another party?
Through the mayor, CBM owns the property.
Okay, assuming everything goes according to schedule, when do you anticipate having, first of all, a public meeting and then getting shovels in the ground, and how long would the extraction process take place?
Through the mayor, Councilor Sutcliffe, for the open house that we would have under the Aggregate Resource Act, we won't be able to have that until M&R deems the application complete. I would anticipate just where they're at with their review timelines and the time it would take, us to prepare all the notices. I would say we would be likely planning for that open house in the spring. With respect to, the timelines for, approval and extraction, it is tough to say, but generally I would find that these types of pit application processes generally take at least a couple of years, 2 to 4 years. And then with respect to the timelines for extraction, certainly I think CBM's identified a need to keep supplying the processing plant at the McNally site. Based on the amount of aggregate that's there, it's roughly 5 million tons. I think they anticipate 10 to 12 years for the timeline for the operation. And I mean, give or take relative to, market demand and economic conditions, but I think that would be sort of the best guess estimate at this point is a 10 to 12 year operation.
I didn't know, I quickly scanned the studies you're undertaking. One item I didn't think I saw was a traffic study. In other words, the number of trucks, type of trucks, that sort of thing.
Through the mayor, I can see that slide and I can realize that was our error on the slide. There was a traffic study prepared as part of this.
Okay, that's great. The question of staff, are we proposing to get into a development agreement for these?
So through Mr. Chair, that is part of our standard process for aggregate applications, so that would be something we discuss.
And what whereabouts in the process would that be?
So through Mr. Chair, it is working through the application now as it's been deemed complete, so we'll start to have those discussions. I know that it's already on the radar of our planning consultant and our legal consultant, so we're working towards that.
Right, that's all the questions I have. Thanks.
I suppose, Councilor Bailey?
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Suppose, for asking about the development agreement. I had this similar question because I think it's a really important piece to keep lines of communication open. If the public have questions, it's a way that we can then find out those answers instead of trying to access it through the ministry. It's not always easy. Just a point of clarification, on the one map, it showed the truck going into the McNally pit. Is that access right off concession 7?
Through the mayor to Councilor Bailey, yes, that would be the access that's directly on concession 7.
Okay.
And just if I can add on the commentary in the development agreement, there are currently agreements in place right now between the township and CBM for the other sites within the area. I think, CBM would anticipate that would be a discussion too relative to this site, and other new files. Lines of communication, and probably Andrea can speak to this, but I think the preference for CBM's perspective is between the township and CBM, not through the ministry, right? To open that line of communication, and if you want to add a few things on that might be helpful.
Transparency and communication is key. We're local, as you know, and we would prefer it that way. And we're happy to work with the township. Any concerns, comments, questions, we're here to answer them as best we can.
Great. I did have a question. In all of this, I know this is this is a big topic, but a lot of questions I'll get from residents is they're wanting to know, is there actually an express need for this pit? What is the like showing a demonstration of need for all the aggregate? A lot of the residents are like, another pit coming in, like, do we really need this much? Is there a way that you, when you're doing your documentation, to be able to sort of provide a demonstration of need? And that might show data from the province. It might show, why West Lynch is going to get cut up again.
Through the mayor to Councilor Bailey, it's a bit of I appreciate and can understand, and we expect that question will come up. It's a fine line from land use planning, because technically you don't have to demonstrate need for aggregate because of the provincial interest in making available. What I would say is, I think when we're going out to the public on this and discussing it, CBM is going to be highlighting why this site, right? Why this location relative to everything that's going on within this area. The other thing to the slide that Andrea Ann pointed out on the rehabilitation, I think we see right now, the picture of the pits within that area, and it is, I think, a common question that comes up. Another one now, why? And I think we want to highlight what CBM has been doing for the other sites that are not known, right? And I think many in the community wouldn't know about the pits that got rehabilitated back to farmland, that have been surrendered, the sites that have been rehabilitated that are now being proposed for industrial development. And then the natural feature restoration that has been occurring on the sites that we know. So we're gonna speak a lot to that, right? Because I think it is an important thing, but certainly we will appreciate and you know, the commentary about, okay, here's another one, you know, where are we going with this? So appreciate you letting us know, because I do think there's probably a lot we can do publicly as to how we're
Yeah.
communicating that.
Yeah, no, I agree, Neil. I see the need to demonstrate that a bit more. And there's certainly some ideas I currently have that we can put to paper. Yeah.
And then I guess I just had a question. I haven't seen a pit where you have a hydro cut or something going through it where it's actually splitting up the property. So I presume they're gonna be circulated on everything. There's gonna be comments. So I guess I look forward to what their, you know, comments or questions are about that as well. I presume you have that dialogue going with hydro.
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Bailey, yeah, Hydro One has to be circulated on this. It is an interesting example, because in a lot of cases, the hydro lines are easements, right? So still, you know, privately owned by the individual. In this case, Hydro One has outright ownership over that piece, right? So there are agreements in place for access, because otherwise the back half of the property would be sterilized, right? It's currently being farmed, so there are agreements in place about utilizing that land, but certainly the change in use and then how, you know, extraction setback from the hydro corridor, because I expect Hydro One's gonna want to ensure that that corridor is protected and any existing and future plans that they may have for that. So we'll definitely be engaging and discussing with them to make sure, you know, what's being proposed is meeting their requirements. And I expect there could be, you know, additional things added to the site plan or changes made to address whatever that may be.
And access.
Mhm.
Good. And I guess just we're talking about communication, but it would be great if you could share your contact with us. So
Yes,
that we have someone
absolutely.
to reach out to. Thank you.
Councillors?
Yeah, thanks. I think most of my questions were answered through my colleagues here. Maybe just one, and I think maybe the context to it is went through a fairly lengthy rural employment area study within the township, and the proximity of this proposed pit's very much within, I believe the piece closer to concession 7 would fall within that. And I don't expect an answer off the top of your head today, but I think that's something that, you know, I look at where the township's going from an employment land, and then we see a potential, you know, ARA application here. And so how do these both fit? So probably something to consider, but also, you know, in the rehab plan, what I saw in your deck, which I thought was like really well done, 2 ponds adjacent to potential employment land. So maybe something to think about there is what the end point is, and maybe ought not to be 2 pits, knowing full well what the adjacent properties tend to be, would be employment lands type of thing. So I'll leave that for thoughts and consideration. I think that's really all my questioning or observations more than anything.
Through the mayor to Councillor Hurst, thank you for bringing that up. Certainly aware of that, because there is a portion that's affected by it. I think, you know, we've passed along information to the township and county on this. I think what we're hoping is that we can, you know, collectively discuss this, because I think CBM doesn't want to do something that's going to negatively affect, you know, what Portsmouth's just trying to do with respect to, you know, making additional rural employment land available. So if there's a way that we can look at, to your words, fitting it in, like, I think that's where we'd want to see the conversation go for sure. So I think, speaking for CBM, they'd be more than willing to talk further, you know, in specifics about this relative, you know, to this application that's been submitted.
Fantastic. And I think it's a good timing opportunity now to think about kind of what the future may look like post extraction, if this ends up going through the full process, in light of all the other activities going on in that small geography.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. First slide, it shows the material going to McNally. You mentioned McNally. Have you done a calculation of total capacity available at McNally?
Through you, Mayor Sealy, the silt, if you're speaking with respect to the silt deposition, there has been work undertaken with respect to supplying that plant and what it would mean for the silt deposition. Because there is, you know, another project that we'll be talking about this morning too, that is in a similar position as that, right? So, my understanding is that, you know, that is being looked at relative to both existing and future. And certainly, Mayor Sealy, we can take it back and look at it further, but my understanding too is the installation of the groundwater trench, you know, requested by the township hydrogeologist was to, you know, assist with respect to those potential impacts as a result of the silt deposition, but, you know, we can, you know, go back and make sure that we've looked at that, ensure it's relative to this application and the considerations.
Can we pull up the aerial view? Okay, area. So that site's interesting because where that trench was installed, it's on the Coburg license. That top corner is Aberfoyle South. There's two licenses.
So that's Aberfoyle North, Aberfoyle Main. There's a south portion south of the 401.
Yes,
Correct.
so that silt pond with the trench in it is on, see, this is where even when we meet with the ministry, we start saying Aberfoyle North, South, this, the other thing, it's very confusing. Should just use the license, but see, basically you can see that silt pond north of your processing plant, where the wording is, no, below, down, there.
Mhm.
That piece there is my understanding is on the license for the.
That is part of license 5520.
Correct. So, your processing plant is then on the adjacent.
Correct.
Somebody will speak, that shouldn't be able to speak. And so my original you can leave that up, oh, sorry. My original question was, you know, I'm assuming you're going to be doing some calculations on what McNally can receive for silt depositing. And so is the intent of CBM to fill that entire property with silt? Right now, so if you look at that, you can see there's your neighbors, there's dark water. And the light blue indicates activity from aggregate. So focusing back on the McNally, are you utilizing both of those ponds currently that are outside the license for the silt pond for operations? It looks like there's silt going into those ponds currently. And is that where this new application is going to be depositing? Because the other pond looks full.
Where you see the tan colored silt,
So,
the footprint is going to be
well, this is,
very little more in addition to that.
that's essentially now. This chunk is on that license.
Correct.
When you see this light blue, that shows activity in the industry. Dark, 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 dark. That shows that there is an activity in the industry. That's the first column with the compliance assessment reports. So this plant is going to be receiving material from down the road. If this is full, right, where's the silt gonna go? It's gonna go in these ponds.
No, it's, we've installed a silt curtain so that the silt will not progress much further than currently because we put it in the water. The silt's going to go up versus out to.
Up versus out.
Is the plan.
So that's important for us to know.
To create a drier, more usable environment on that silt, on top of the silt.
Because currently, those other ponds are not
They're not so.
identified as silt ponds.
And they're, any of the silt that is reaching them is either through it going onto the silt plume or the silt pond at this time. With the curtain, which was installed about a month ago, so. And then the Nybauer pit to the south is active, that's why it's a lighter blue.
Yeah.
And McNally East, I'm not sure why that's lighter blue. There may be a small amount of surface leakage that is enough. It would only take a very small amount of silt to change the color on if the lights right.
But
So that, because that McNally East pond is a very, very deep pond still. It doesn't have
so anyways,
there's
it's
not a silt discharge area.
for me, it's concerning because they appear to be utilized as silt ponds and they're not identified in your site plan as silt ponds. And then to add additional feeder pits, which I don't know where that terminology comes from. I don't know if it's been created by the industry or if it's in the area. I haven't found it, but so compliance. That's the messaging I sent to Andrea when we had our meeting. So for me, it's identifying how much capacity is there, where it's going, right? I'm gonna bounce around here a little bit. Yeah, sure. I'll just ask him to put it back up later. Another concern I've heard, specifically around the Roselle area, which is one of your pits. Well, we also have the impact to neighboring, surface water ponds. I know there's probably a professional disagreement between whether there's an impact or not between our Hydro G and I don't know if on your engineering Hydro G or the previous ones, there was a pond that went dry. There's allegations that the silt barrier isn't working properly. And this is in addition to that, weeds. That one specifically because the farms are located to the east of the pit and with predominantly west winds. The farmers say the weeds on the berms receive no control, and then it gets into their crops, and it's becoming a concern. We have property standards for residential properties that if they don't mow their lawn, they don't maintain it. There's a complaint, we can address that with the ARA. You have immunity from essentially everything from us with your extractive zone, right? So even if we had concerns with your weeds on Roselle, we can't do anything about it. The farmer just has to deal with it. So that's a relatively new development for me, and I think it's valid. I would like some discussion around that. Now, this property is different because the majority of the face of the property is narrower facing west. But those other two immediately to the south and all the ones to the north may become employment lands. It may be of a concern of the weeds on the berms. So whether that's through rehab or bermage design cover, I don't know. But it's a real thing because I've gone down to see the farmers. So development agreements. Oh, go ahead.
Can I speak to those weeds?
Sure.
Martin contacted me about
Yeah.
a concern about weeds on the berm, probably in 2017 or 2018.
Mhm.
And we went out and we addressed the weeds on the berm at that time. And I have not heard from him since, other than he was okay with.
Oh,
the
he's
free
not
go.
okay.
He's not okay now,
No.
but he has not expressed that to us.
Okay.
And so if he expresses that to us, we're happy to address it. But this is the first I've heard of it since, I sprayed the weeds after he said he had an issue with them a number of years ago.
Well, we will follow up with Martin, but I think it boils down to their communication and, we're here to improve that as much as we can and address any concerns.
Well, ultimately, maybe there's a better fix in the sense of different planting cover crop that keeps weeds out. I don't know. But, nobody really wants to have to go spray weeds twice a year. I don't know. Maybe you do.
The weeds, the berm is well vegetated, which is our requirement, and it was planted with a grass legume mix, the typical, what we call MTO mix. But there were thistles that came up through it and goldenrod, and the thistles were addressed. The goldenrod, it just got mad and was still there, but so some of that.
Yeah.
The vegetation.
It's just this is the time.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Back to the development agreements, those are important. I recognize that you would likely have little obligation to enter into development agreements. I mean, we're heavily regulated through the ARA and provincial legislation. But for us, the more we can get into a development agreement, because we're not seeing the action on compliance from your regulator that we would like to see. And for whether it be the rehab plan, I'm on I forget what the acronym. It was PAC committee, maybe you're familiar. OSSGA is funding it and participating, and the intent is to develop rehabilitation guidelines that will hopefully be adopted by the ministry and the industry. And I very much so say to them, it's not worth the paper it's penned on if the ministry allows the operators to just amend the rehab plans every time they apply, minor or major. And that's what we see, right? We see that as our close to market location, that the gravel is important to CBM and to the province, and that's why we see more pits. It's that trumps our farmland, that trumps our community, and it's built into you're permitted to apply, and the rules are set so that you will get your applications. But these things get amended. So that's my concern with rehab. And so if we can get rehab into development agreements, unless through this committee that I've been on for a year, and I said this to the MNR delegation yesterday, that the MNR stops allowing modification to the rehab plans, then development agreements are happening, because then we can say, and we can get to a place where maybe you build the whole rehab plan and we say, okay, like your rehab plan in 2026. And as long as we hold it to that, we're good. It's the modifications constantly. So again, back to the rehab or the development agreements, the more we can come get in there, the better it is for the township. You mentioned in the one item, there was yellow component to backfill it for residential purposes. Just walk me through the rationale on that. Why do you need to bring in fill to backfill? Are you trying to, and I appreciate it, are you trying to just say, hey, here's an end use, you might be able to get a house in here, or I just found it odd because if you look at our previous council meetings, we have 30 active fill importation files. 2 over the last 2 years received a permit, the rest were bylaw enforcement. So for me saying, yeah, hey, let's bring in more fill and make a spot there, just red flags. So if you could just walk through that,
Yeah.
the rationale and the idea behind that.
Yeah, through the mayor, and I will start by saying a lot of what you're bringing up is gonna get fleshed out through the application review process, you know, following a determination on completeness, but to answer your question, the idea was because it's a narrow segment, like a very narrow strip of the extraction area, the idea was to fill it to potentially accommodate residential development. That was the idea. If the township came, you know, looking at it, said, well, no, that's not what we want to see, then we can adjust the rehabilitation plan accordingly. I think the thought here was recognizing that there are the existing house there on the property, that if it allowed an opportunity for a severance or 2 in the future, that may be something the township would be interested in, you know, as we've seen on some of the other sites. But certainly if there's, you know, major red flags with any idea of bringing something in there, then, you know, CBM can take that back and look at the rehab plan and how that portion of it is functioning.
For me, it'd be, you know, staff will work through that, but again, if it's in a development agreement, I'm more comfortable with it, but I'm just, the fill thing is a major concern. It was interesting when I participated in the lake public meeting that CBM hosted. I was obviously naive. I didn't actually realize you were obligated to have your own public meeting. And from, what's that fella's name? He was so wonderful that he left. He's left you guys now. Andrea, you filled a spot.
David Henry.
David Henry, the rhetoric coming from him sounded like you're very much so accountable to addressing the comments in those public meetings, which was nice to hear. And at the time, I didn't recognize that it was required under the ARA. You mentioned it today. I do recall from that meeting, and I'm not saying it was justified, but some of the public saying they didn't appreciate either the component, it was only virtual, and maybe some of the how people were notified. I just recall there being some, and some of them are maybe squeaky wheels and it's just the same, I don't know, but I'd like you to take a look at that feedback that was received, because maybe we still have a demographic down in concession 2 that's not as technologically savvy and doesn't want to participate in the electronic component. Maybe they do. I'd appreciate that, because I do recall hearing that, and I think it's important the public know that they do have 2 opportunities, because we'll likely have a public meeting as well, so they can participate in yours, which we won't have control over how you address those. And I do believe you address the concerns brought up in this meeting as well, because I had a follow-up meeting with you guys. So that's good to look back on that. It's interesting you said 12-year lifespan. I don't buy it at all, but it does raise a flag that, you know, you're gonna license for $1 million, and then you say a 12-year, that means you're gonna run at 500,000, you know, tons a year, and market conditions, you may need more, you may not need more. So to me, that's just a flag. I'd appreciate not putting numbers out in the community, because how long's Coburg been there? The Snyder Sign Pit since the 50s. That's a lot longer than 12 years. And from our recent communication with the MNR, you can have that operating forever. There's nothing that's going to stop you from closing it. So putting that narrative out there that will be here 12 years, I find that troubling, because that's truly not the case. Historically, maybe it will be different there. That's the total. And Councillor Bailey brought up the hydro corridor. This is your responsibility. You've probably already been engaged, but we had some meetings with was it IESO? And I assume they're gonna twin that. They need a new transmission line staff and myself and Councillor Palmer met with Hydro One yesterday. And we were talking about the transmission line because of the destruction of the land on concession 2, they can't go west. They don't float. So likely they will have to go south. They did mention there's going to be multiple routes planned for this new transmission line. Is it Preston?
Preston and Cambridge, yes.
So they are looking now. Does that mean they need to twin that? And I have no idea how wide the corridor is or their needs, but you definitely look into that because they're moving forward on that pretty significantly. And that pit must be outside the Greenbelt. I know the Greenbelt boundary runs through there. Is your lands?
Through the mayor, there's about 1 hectare that's within the
Just
Greenbelt plan, like this southern portion. So on one of the slides, we had the rehabilitation concept and we had this pollinator plot area. That's roughly that area of the Greenbelt. So that's why we've taken in the Greenbelt policies for rehabilitation and applied it within. That's why it's kind of specifically within that area.
Right, because the Greenbelt doesn't prohibit extraction of gravel.
No, there's there's different requirements though for rehabilitation when you're in the Greenbelt versus not in the Greenbelt. So that's why that area is sort of enhanced in that nature. Just on the, Mayor Seeley, on Hydro One, the width of that property that they have was always done on the basis that would be twinned.
There you go.
So we, CBM, I don't think it's heard directly that that's what they're doing, but that's, when you look at where the line is with what they have available, that's what they were
I
planning to
assumed
do.
as much too, but because we're talking with them, I wasn't sure if IESO and Hydro, one of those two dots are connecting, right? So I know they're hot to trot and they're going through their process, but so is it two different contact points? Is Hydro One the contact point? Is IESO? Is it both? That's up to you, but
Right,
yeah, I
right.
assume they'd have double, because they even mentioned they've had this on the books, like forecast for years, so. Yeah, I think it's, it's good that we communicate compliance. That's what I said to Andrea. That's important to us. If we're gonna have a gravel pit, then I want it to stay a gravel pit. The fish farming, just showing up is a concern. Is a concern because we haven't seen any reports. If somebody tells you it's safe until we have, the reviews and by our experts, it could be fine, but with the unknowns, that's why so anyways, I look forward to that process. I think staff will work diligently with you. And that's all I have. I know it's big, grant, but then, I guess we're gonna do the second one.
Through Mr. Chair, we have a motion prepared to receive the first delegation for information.
Okay, can I move for that, please? Councillor Spills, Councillor Hurst, all in favor? Carried, and then we'll move into the next one.
So we are now speaking about the Aberfoyle South Lake Pit. And before I jump into the presentation, I do want to mention that this project was formerly known as a pit expansion. We had first identified it when it was submitted as Aberfoyle South Pit Expansion. I would say probably every public comment we received on it was confusion and saying, how is this a pit expansion? CBM has taken that and has renamed it to the Aberfoyle South Lake Pit. So it's still considered a new license application under the Aggregate Resource Act. But certainly, out of all the comments that we've been receiving on this project, that was one of the biggest ones. Next slide, please. So there's quite a bit of a history to this application and where we started and what we've been doing over the last couple of years. So in late 2023, applications were submitted under the Planning Act and Aggregate Resource Act to permit a below water pit at the lake property. The proposed license area is about 45 hectares. Extraction area is 27 hectares. Similar to what we mentioned on the Safaric pit, the maximum annual tonnage limit is 1 million tons. And again, the feeder pit, which is not a defined term in the ARA, but is a term that's been coined within the industry about essentially a load and haul operation. So that material that's extracted here would then be processed at the McNally site. The rehabilitation concept, which is shown on the next page, just to highlight a couple key elements. There's about 26 hectare lake. What I would say on this property, just relative to looking at this final landform, the water table is quite high. Most of the sites identified within the floodplain. The lake that you see essentially goes very close to the limits of the extraction area. Within the setback areas, and the setback areas are 30 meters from all wetlands and significant woodlands, there will be a mix of tree planting and wetland creation. The tree planting area is about 6.7 hectares in size. And then the wetlands that are proposed to be created are just under 1 hectare. Next slide, please. To summarize a bit on the timeline of this application, and as I went back on, our files for this project, CBM was first in front of Township Council, letting them know about this property and project in late 2019. There's been a lot of effort and undertaking on this file. As I noted, the applications were submitted in late 2023. We had done formal pre-consultation with the township and the county between 2021 and 2023. At the end of 2023, M&R deemed the license application complete. What that meant then is CBM was then able to initiate their notification and consultation process. So that was undertaken in spring of 2024. That included the virtual open house that Mayor Seeley mentioned, and I believe it was May of 2024. As part of the submission that had been made at the end of 2023, we did receive a detailed submission or detailed comments from the township with respect to the materials that have been provided. And I think since that period, we were out in the public with the open house and the notices in spring of 2024, what I would say is the last year and a half, the whole thing that has been undertaken is reviewing comments and then doing additional technical work and investigations. I'll speak to some of the key changes. There were a lot of valid comments raised, right? And I'm not limiting that to the township or peer reviewers. The public had valid things to say. So what it did for CBM is to really go back and look at everything that had been received and figure, okay, what additional work is needed to assess impacts, what changes are needed to help address. I honestly don't know if, everything that's been proposed will satisfy all commenters, but I think, we've worked really diligently here to make sure that the changes and the additional information were well thought out, given the comments that we've received. So starting in November to earlier this month, we've responded to all comments that were made under the ARA application. And we've outlined what those changes are. And so I'll highlight a bit of the additional work and those changes. Go to the next slide, please. So in terms of some of the additional technical work, there's a few things that I wanted to specifically highlight. Certainly all this information has been shared with the township, which I understand has also been circulated to your peer reviewers. The big items that I would want to note, it really revolves around Mill Creek, the associated wetlands, and flooding concerns. So additional work has been undertaken to understand those impacts, what levels they are, where we're seeing potential for impacts, what mitigation is required. And so a hydrological and ecological monitoring plan has been developed. So this essentially identifies and helps to verify what those impacts are and establish what are known as trigger levels. So when water levels surface or groundwater reach a certain trigger, then certain remedial actions have to be undertaken. So all of that has been informed into that monitoring plan. We've changed the ARA site plan. We've made sure to show all changes in red lines so that people are able to see what exactly has changed from what was first submitted. And then written responses have been provided to all agency and peer review comments. Next slide, please. Just quickly to go through some of the key changes that have been made to the application. I mentioned the name change. I also mentioned the development of the hydrological and ecological monitoring plan, which has now been incorporated onto the site plan. There's been additional mitigation measures that are proposed. There's more visual screening, tree screening. There's been improvements made to the pit entrance in terms of how much of the pit entrance is paved internally on CBM sites. signage, mitigation measures to ensure that mud's not being tracked out onto concession 2. There's also been additional monitoring locations added for both groundwater and surface water to expand the baseline information that's currently available on this site to better improve the understanding of how both those are functioning. CVM will be incorporating a maximum disturbed area on the site. So that basically says, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 50% of the site can be disturbed at any one time, to help with respect to progressive rehabilitation and how that is occurring relative to the site's operation. We've worked out the sort of geotechnical requirements with respect to trucks using concession 2 to get to McNally, as well as I should note that Mill Creek, there's Mill Creek culvert underneath concession 2. There's also looking at that, the structural stability of that and how that's going to be looked at relative to trucks using that section of the road. There's been additional noise restrictions added to operating equipment, both in terms of their permitted levels, but then the number of equipment operating within the site. And then we've added further details on what I would call rehabilitation targets for tree plantings and wetland creation. Basically, there's a requirement for how many trees have to be planted, what species are planted for the wetland, how that's then monitored and managed to ensure the survivability of those features. So all these changes we've communicated directly to all commenters under the Aggregate Resource Act application. We've provided opportunity to review and discuss and provide further comments. All this information has been put up on the project website. There is a lot there, and I think, I'm speaking that just from the perspective of the township and staff receiving this information, there's a lot, and it's going to take, I expect it's going to take you some time and your reviewers time to sort through this. I think the step that we're at right now in deeming this application complete, which we support staff's recommendation, is an important one. Essentially, the ARA process is 2 years ahead of the planning process. And I think the opportune time in deeming this complete is now, because we've got all this information that's been sent out over the last few months. By deeming complete allows you to then formally circulate, have public information meetings where we can then further discuss this in a form that, in front of your form. Certainly CVM will be talking individually, with commenters about questions and further information. But I think the idea of having another venue, and I know what, Mayor Seeley, your comments about the open house, and I do recall that there was some questions about, I think it was the virtual format and likely the presentation itself. So I think that's another way in which I'd anticipate, at the community center, that we would be able to have people in too, and recognizing it is your meeting, but I think we would still be, we would be responsible, we feel, for speaking to the information that we've provided to the community and the changes that have been made. So I think that timing would work well for that to happen, because obviously it won't be sort of the last discussion either, and will likely be more things that we'll be working on with the public. Next slide, please. I realize that essentially says what I just said on this slide, but essentially we're supporting staff's recommendation to deem the applications complete. I'll mention what I said about Seferic 2. Does not prejudge this application. The completeness is to allow it to be processed and circulated. As a heads up, within the next month, because of our 2-year timeline under the Aggregate Resource Act process, we will have to issue objection forms to all remaining commenters under the Aggregate Resource Act application. So township right now, and the county is in a similar position, is considered a formal commenter. So we will be issuing you the township and county objection forms. Essentially, that's not the end of the ARA process. We are limited by 2 years within the legislation that we essentially have to complete all our reporting to M&R. And basically what we then say to M&R is these are all the objectors to the PIT application. We'll still work after that date to help resolve and answer questions, but there's a bit of a communications piece on our side too for the public that we tried to answer in giving them the update about what this means and why we have to do it and when we have to do it. Because it is a bit of it's a unique, like the Planning Act process and Aggregate Resource Act process are very similar for consultation, but this objection form is very different. So we're gonna try to do our best to try to explain what it means. At the end of the day, I would expect the majority will maintain their objection, and that's totally fine, right? That allows us to keep working through the process, and try to respond and address to as many comments as we can. I appreciate you giving me a chance. Hopefully I didn't go too far past the 10 minutes, but certainly happy to answer any questions.
I didn't have my stopwatch on. Mr. Spillis.
Yes, okay, similar questions as before, do you own the property outright or do you lease it from somebody?
Through the mayor to councilor sublist, the CBM does own this property outright.
In terms of, development agreement staff, are we planning to do the same thing as well? Okay, great. In terms of, public meeting, I noticed that our, council report says March the 4th, is that, doable? Is it likely gonna be later?
Mr. Chair, I'd ask our clerk to maybe comment.
Through the chair, this is what we've identified as the tentative date. If we need to move forward later in the future, we will, but this is just tentative on what it looks like right now. We haven't sent any formal notice as the application hasn't been submitted.
You mentioned that you had a series of questions and you're addressing those questions. Is there a document that sort of outlines the questions that were asked and the answers that were responded to? Is that available on your website?
Yes, through the mayor, we've essentially prepared a Q&A document that has been shared. So summarizing all the main comments we heard and the responses to those. The additional information that's been provided is largely technical. It'll be difficult, I think, for a lot of people to kind of go through everything and understand, okay, well, what exactly is this telling me? So the purpose of that document was to help, summarize and then make it more understandable with respect to how those comments are being responded to.
So for some of us more technical people, is there a document that does that?
Yes, through the mayor, yes.
That's him.
Yes.
Okay, can you elaborate a little bit on the objection process? I've never heard of that before. Like, what is it for? What does it do? What does it accomplish?
Yes, through the mayor, when we start our Aggregate Resource Act consultation, we have a 60-day comment period.
Mhm.
Anyone who wishes to comment on that application comments within that period. When any comments we get within that 60-day comment period, we then have to attempt to address those comments. Where a commenter has indicated their comments haven't been addressed to their satisfaction, we then have to issue what I was calling the objection form. So it's basically our summary of their issues, our responses, and our final recommendations. And it then gives that individual the chance to either, okay, I'm fine, I have no further comments, or they have the ability to maintain their objection. The reason why that's done is M&R wants to understand, basically M&R is looking for a list of how many people would maintain their objection. Because should this end up being, referred to Ontario Land Tribunal, those that maintain their objection then have standing at the hearing. That's why that's kind of why they've done it that way. And it has changed over the last 5 years where it's much more paperwork oriented so that M&R feels like they can say, okay, we had nine people maintain the rejection. Those 9 people then get standing at the Ontario Land Tribunal hearing.
Last question, in terms of timing, when do you anticipate getting through this process and starting excavating, and how long do you think it'll take?
Through the mayor, I would say, it's 2 years since we made the big submission on it, but I think with the additional information we provide, I expect there's still gonna be, additional time needed for your own expert peer reviewers and the public to review. So I would say at this point, we're likely still gonna be another year within your process and consultation, I would expect. Certainly if we get, through the reviews and the technical side, if we've got close to getting to the point where we're seeing those sign-offs, I'm sure CBM would be thrilled that this would be in front of council for decision in the spring. I think realistically, we obviously we don't want to rush it either on our end. I probably in the same for council's perspective, but I think this is a site that CBM has a need to keep bringing material to the McNally plant. So I think if it were to be approved, like the timelines for extraction would, that they would relatively be getting into that site very soon. Taking into account the mayor's concerns about putting a timeline, I will say,
I think,
Okay.
respectful, the mayor says, I think,
Okay.
I'd like to have a window at least.
yeah, so through the mayor, what we've publicly stated on this one is the lake pit would be 6 to 10 years.
That's all the question.
Yes, we.
Thank you. Yeah, just piggybacking on the objection form, thanks for explaining it, because my big question was, what's an objection form? Do you know right now how many you'll be issuing?
Yeah, so through the mayor to Councillor Bailey, right now, I think from the total list, including review agencies and members of the public, we're at about 25 to 30, I believe. So, we have been getting some responses to date. Some agencies have indicated that the information provided has answered their questions. I expect that, our experience generally on aggregate applications is it's not usual that a member of the public would say, okay, I'm fine with this. And I think that's totally fair. And I don't think we want to put anybody in that position where they feel like they're forced to say that. So I think when we get to the point where we're sending those objection forms, it would be going out probably to about 20 members of the public. I think that's probably my guess at this point.
Okay, and I'm happy to hear about this Q&A document, so that's something at least we can refer people to
Yes.
as well, if they can look through that. Touching on the silt ponds that the mayor had mentioned later. So now we've got a second pit going to try to feed these silt ponds. Are we making a Mount Puss Lynch? How do we deal with all of this, and where does the height, like, is there a maximum height capacity that you have in these silt ponds? Or talk to me a little bit about when you run out of room or what's happening there.
Well, I think from, those are great questions, and that's a great one. We're gonna have to take that back and get you some more details on that,
Mhm.
I think. I mean, unless you have,
Building a ski hill.
I don't have calculations in my back
we have
pocket,
to go
but
back to our calculation.
I'm confident that that silt pond has a lot of capacity still if we put proper structures in place to improve it.
Okay, thanks.
And through the mayor to Councillor Bailey, the silt deposition was specifically identified through your reviewers on this one too. So as part of the technical responses, there was additional information provided on it specifically to the lake addition. But granted, the other file, like taking it, a holistic approach, I think is, sort of the homework for us to get back to you on some answers on that.
Thanks. And then I've just been reading a little bit with some pit applications and stuff out of Caledon, and they mentioned something called a social impact assessment. Have you heard of that? And I guess my question to staff is, I don't know enough about it. I haven't done enough digging, but it sounds like something I'd be interested in looking into. At what point in the process could we be wanting one, requiring one? How does that work? Can we request one?
So through Mr. Chair, we are working with our planner. We happen to share the same planner for these files with Caledon, some of our pit files. So we are looking into what they're doing in Caledon. Patmo is also playing an active role looking at the different standards and that municipalities that have membership are putting out. And so Patmo and Puss Lynch have been actively looking at that, whether that applies to these pits or how or where, yet to be determined, but we are looking at it.
Okay. And it just might be something, knowing other pits, other applications, or looking into something like that, you might want to be as well. Anyway, thank you.
Councillors?
Yeah, thanks. I really don't have a lot of questions. I think this is a trickier pit. I think I've had lots of feedback from the community around apprehensions, and it isn't new news to you, I suspect at this point. So I think, yeah, in terms of the completeness, I have no issues. You're working through the process. This will have a long tail to it, I suspect. So I'll leave it at that.
I appreciate the change from expansion to just a pit. My understanding is it actually didn't matter. You can call it what you want, but the requirements made you consider it as so whether that was just for, to smooth over public perception, so be it. It is what it is, as long as you're held to the standard of it's a new pit. I would say the similar, I should know, but are you calling concession 7 an expansion? You're calling it a feeder? I don't know. Just call it Big Pig, because it doesn't change how you have to address it. I find it interesting, actually, I'll back up. The hauling from Lake to McNally, that movement of the material in a traditional sense of a gravel pit would be internal. Due to our proximity and close to market aggregate, you guys want it all, so you keep expanding, so then thus that internal haulage becomes external, then it gets processed, and then it goes to market. So your decision says you can't just tax, fee can't be a tax. You have to justify the cost of the infrastructure, or whatever it shall be, it has to cover the cost, it can't be in addition. So for our concern, you are now having double the impact on our infrastructure because that internal haulage on a traditional operation is now external. So that's a concern for the municipality because what was the tonnage, approximate amount of gravel available at Lake?
I think it's roughly 5.5 million.
5.5, okay. So we have 5.5 million tons of aggregate that would normally be hauled internally going down. Now, listen, maybe concession 2, you become fully responsible for it through a development agreement, and that impact is negated because you just look after the road, fix it as needed, whatever. But that's something you're gonna have to work out. But we were having discussions, and we weren't the only municipality or TAPMO discussing the torque review due to the new what we're seeing of operations of the industry of that hauling material all over the place. So the minister specifically asked me about it at our delegation, and it's a very complicated calculation because construction costs for rehabilitating anyways. So it's not an easy fix. I don't believe it's an easy fix, but I do believe it's double the impact. On that note, I love reading compliance assessment reports. I read every operator's compliance assessment report in the township, and I review it, desktop review, through satellite imagery, things of that nature. And one of your other operators indicated that a pit was nearly extracted and they had removed the scale house. And I thought, well, how are they weighing the material and reporting torque and that they don't have a scale house? So I mentioned it to MNR. So don't feel like you're being picked on because I'm picking on everybody. Okay. And so it's our understanding that maybe look for confirmation from CBM that there is not a component of ARA that requires compliance to weights of trucks on the municipal right of way, or maybe even in a different terminology, the ARA doesn't have authority over the trucks on the roads, which was kind of a red flag for us because, okay, so now you get a pit near the end of life and you remove the scale. How does the municipality know that you're not overloading your trucks and having more impact on our infrastructure? And from what we heard from MNR was that, well, that's not our area of responsibility. What they do is delineate where the scale house will be on the site plan. And that's where they hold you accountable. So if you say it's going to be here, that's where it shall be. So I don't know if you have any comments on that. Because you want scales obviously to charge your customers and likely to make sure you're not overloading trucks, but that's not an ARA component.
Mayor Seeley, thanks for the question. I think the MNR comment response you got about regulating trucking activity on roads is correct, right? There's a limitation on what they're able to do. They're I think with respect to their jurisdiction for Aggregate Resource Act matters as it relates to trucking, it's kind of ending where the license boundary ends, right? So in a case of Lake, because I believe one of your peer reviewers brought this up with us as well. They said, where's your scale house? How do we know how much is being brought out on a site? Similar to the other sites that CBM has here that are feeding McNally, they're weighed by the loader that loads the trucks. So the other sites don't have a scale house. It's different for what I would call a pit, where you have different companies coming in, trucking information out, and you get a ticket, right? And then it's billed to the customer, right? In this case, this is all for their supply purposes. So, and that's necessary because the regulation for MNR is, you have a tonnage limit, you have to report on it, and you have to pay a levy on it.
Right.
So for, ones that are nearing them where you're not being accountable like that is an issue with MNR, and they would certainly rate because from the perspective of understanding where you're at with your limit, but more importantly, you're not paying a fee on it, right?
But what's more important to me is that that truck isn't overloaded. So for
Right.
you don't give a hill of bean, maybe you do, but you want to get as much material in that truck. You will, yes, that is important for you to know for your total tonnages, for your torque fee. But do you ultimately care if it's overweight or is it an efficiency? Because now that truck takes an extra 2 tons down to your processing plant. Over the year, that's 1,000 less trip. And so for us, it's very much so an issue. That truck needs to be legal weight. Now, when I was in the industry many years ago, the loaders had scales in them. But they weren't they weren't allowed to be used for the ticket, or that you would need to be on the MTO right away or on any right of way. It wasn't a legal scale. That's why when you're driving down the highway, you'll see CAT, legal scales. So then a transport company can pull in, they can get weighed. If they get pulled over later, this is a legal, call it document, where the loader scales, albeit accurate, were not considered for legal for loading vehicles to go on the road. That may have changed because this has been a long time. But so for me, it's not acceptable to, unless the regulations have changed and that loader scales are a permitted legal scale for that. Then I have reassurance, well, for the most part, that they're not being overloaded. Does that make sense?
Yes, Mayor Sealy. Maybe I'll let Steve jump in if you can, just about the loading of trucks, but I would say the issue you're bringing up is not that different than what we had with respect to trucks crossing concession 2 using rock trucks, right? And the concern from what I recall from the township was about, essentially putting oversized equipment on road, at 40 tons, that would be my guess. So, if they're discussing with CBM is, remove that, right? And it's now what we call highway trucks. So
But again, even those, they're not weight, they're weight. So a triaxle dump truck can physically carry more weight than is legally licensed for the road. It's the old analogy of, I'll leave it there.
Yeah,
The box is bigger.
we'll certainly take that back with CBM to make sure we get back to you on that. I appreciate where you're coming from with that concern as well, relative to the road infrastructure.
Because it all comes down to the levy is, they use a calculation, which is not a science, I don't believe. But we're all working under the assumption that they're gonna carry this much weight. If you're carrying more weight, you're having more impacts. How do you end up with ruts in the road? I remember way back in the day, County Road 34 on Andrea, do you remember the ruts in the road from that sucker? Because they had the B trains running down into the one operator. And I was a kid, right? But it was bad. And I guarantee you that, anyways. So if they're weighed at the source, we know they're legal, then we know the impact for the most part. There's always going to be. Anyways, so that's where I'm at. The delineation of the extractive zone versus the license zone. So that was brought up way back when. And what I'll say is that historical actions speak volumes. So we have CBM who at I'll call it the Schneider pit just because it gets confusing under sort of subcommunity, as well as where McNally's silt pond with the trench. Those were discovered by me reading your site plans. They were not identified on your site plans as silt ponds. And there's a report we could dig up where hydrogeologist Stan identifies how long they've been there, because the trees were 8 feet tall or 6 feet tall, and the growth for that means, this has been in operation for, X amount of years. I don't want to quote them, so I'll probably get it wrong. But if they didn't just start doing it, this is something that was historical. Those have been, so anyway, so now we have a situation where CBM has, due to close to market needs, and you're already here, you dig a pond, you're like, well, that looks like a good spot for some silt. And you have McNally, and you're sitting here saying, we're going to bring 5.5 million tons from lake. We're going to bring 5.5 or 5 million from whatever that other last name is. And then I look at lake, and lo and behold, here's the spot within the delineated licensed area that won't be extracted, and you're going to have a lake. How can you reassure the public that you will not create a silt pond there and start processing material in the future? Because your historical operations have done that. So that's a concern. I would rather see that delineation match, and I believe that's comments you've received already, because what's the need? Why do you need that other piece?
Through the mayor, yeah, it's been a common question about, you tell us in that piece and just for everybody's knowledge, it's a piece where the lake house was located. It's kind of on the western side of the property. That's included within the license, but not within the extraction area. We've stated on the site plans, can't do anything aggregate related there, but the question inevitably is, well, then why do you need it? We've taken it out of the zoning bylaw amendment and official plan amendment so that it will not go into an extraction zone. What I would say is the simple fact is included. We included there should there be a requirement for additional natural restoration. There are certain requirements with respect to tree planting and wetlands. We've been in discussion with GRCA about the wetland creation, so they've asked for more. We have been able to accommodate it within that concept plan that I showed. What I would say, just because we have, in full transparency, Mayor Seeley, M&R asked us the same question. Why are you licensing that? So I think as part of, continuing discussions with the township and others, I think it would, CVM can go back and look at it and even adjusting it so that it follows sort of the extraction setback. That's a potential outcome here.
Sure, at least we're looking at this. That's great news.
Because I think and to answer, there's, CVM can jump in, but there's no plans that they're gonna be doing processing of the site, no plans to be.
We don't trust any of this. Like,
I know, I'm
you
saying,
just go to the ministry and you put in a minor or major amendments, you get it. You know what I mean? So we have to ensure that, because you say that now, but look at the historical operations. Everything changes. Rehab plans change, like even McNally. How is McNally rehab plan changing? When you're bringing 5-10 million tons of material into process it, where'd all the topsoil go? You had to bring in topsoil for your operations. Where'd it go? Did it get pushed into the lake? Like there's so many things, and that's why development agreement. This is why we're in this situation, because we don't have a partner that holds you guys to your site plan. They get amended. So, anyways, bit of a rant, but yeah, if you get as much into a development agreement with it as you possibly can, this will be way smoother and faster for you. Because if we can just get a gravel pit that we know is going to be the gravel pit that's proposed to us, you'll see it go smooth. When we have to scrutinize what trucks are allowed to bring material in, the delineation of the extraction versus license boundary, whether there's going to be a fish farm, whether you're going to use scale loaders or a scale house, we know that all this stuff. So it's not anti-gravel, it's just anti-change from what we're told. Right? That's what it is. That's what it is. So sorry to cut you off, but it's okay.
But I was just gonna add, I can't speak to the years and years of history, but I can speak to today. We're here to listen to your concerns. We're here to work together, and there's communication. There's gonna be a lot more communication, and we're here to work together and with the township as best we can.
I'm pretty
And I
straight.
could tell you
Put the silt fence up, because I'm complaining that the silt's going into the balance of the pond. You said yourself the east pond of McNally is very deep. And I said to the M&R, I said, how are they that part that's, I would call full, you're saying it's not full. I don't know, you said you're gonna build some infrastructure, so to put more on it, but I said, look, you can see they're filling the entire lake. So I would pose the question to you again, if you have ideas for infrastructure, then you must have calculated the capacity availability for McNally, or do you have plans to fill that entire site full of silt? Because if you're where's this, I don't know what the percentage numbers are, it's probably proprietary, but if you have 5 million 10.5 billion tons potentially of raw material, what's the amount after washing? Is it 10, 20, 30? And you don't have to answer that if it's proprietary, but it's a lot. Because if it's 10 million tons, if it's 10%, it's 1 million tons of silt going somewhere. So you must have looked at that property. So you either have plans to fill the whole thing, or we're gonna end up with a Mount Puslinch. And I still don't, and I think that water runs downhill. It's gonna take silt into that. So my position would be, unless you're filtering that water, you're using the balance of that property for silt, because some of it's sneaking past. And then again, the little pond, which
Now east.
you mentioned it's very deep, and then you're like, I'm not sure why it's
that color. And when I zoomed in on old satellite photos, you can see a trench from the operations and water flowing. It wasn't rainwater, it looked like it was purpose. So I think anyways. There's a capacity limit there. We'd like to know it because otherwise it's gonna be close to market. Here's another expansion. It's going to McNally and this thing's gonna, and we're gonna look like a waffle. Bushlands Township's gonna look like a waffle, all in the interest of the province. And it's disappointing, sad. So I feel, anyways, like to know the capacity of McNally. I've said it twice or three times, like compliance, stop using those other funds as silt depositing unless you've applied for an amendment. And then kind of similar to Councillor Bailey, I'd like to know if you've got infrastructure, whether it needs to stay confidential and share it with staff, I don't know. I'd like to know what your plans are. Are you making a mountain? Are you not? Are you gonna haul it away or what are you doing with it? So this is a lot of material. I think that's all I have. So I'd rather be upfront with you. Just tell you where I'm at. So
We will be transparent with you.
yeah, and I like the idea.
Happy to have those discussions.
The public meeting, I think I heard you say, our public meeting, but still take that feedback for yours. So sorry, there was two. The Lake Pit's gonna come back and we're gonna host it and you're gonna be there for answers, but the ARA one, go back, it was videoed. Hopefully you still have that data and just see what
It's
those
on our
comments,
website.
see what those comments were. And if you can, address them for the landowners in the area and whether it be in person at PCC or something. I think that would go a long way too.
Yeah, and through the mayor too, the one other thing, element for Lake that's come up is a proposal. It's not a cure-all, but just on the lines of open communication and transparency with the public. Is, setting up a public liaison committee specifically for that one, given the level of interest, right? And I mean, there's even things of looking at doing this even before a decision was made on the applications, if that makes sense, right? So it's a way of further getting some of the information out and having another forum to have that dialogue. So there are things that we're looking at that have been offered that certainly, want to make sure we run things by the township as well to make sure, you think that's a good idea, but I just wanted to bring that up.
I'm going back to Silt. So we got 10.5 million coming from these two. We have Lancey Pit expansion going to McNally. Is Neubauer, because Neubauer and the one next door combined for tonnage, so that one's going in there. Okay, and do we not have documents that Neubauer is heavy on silt, more likely than these ones? So I would like to see the total tonnage from all your operations that's proposed to go to McNally. And how you're addressing that and where that silt's going. That'd be great information. That sounds like a lot. And I know Coburg is receiving, you're bringing it from the Mass Pit up that way. It's all coming down here, but that's another silt plant. So another concern, the Schneider's sign pit, there's permission to fill that one lake and now you got 2 or 3 more. What's the end goal? Are you filling them all? Are you done after you've this silt pond? Transparent. Let's hear it. Let's hear it. Right.
Mhm.
Thank you. And we're going to move up the 2 items.
Thank you.
And deal with them to save you having to sit in the audience for. Well,
We appreciate that.
So yeah, we will move them up. That was our first declaration. So thanks again for coming today. It was great to see you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and we have a recommendation to receive delegation of this information from Councillor Bailey, Councillor Hertz, and all in favor. Carrie, thank you. And it's 9-4, 4-1, 9-4-1, and what's the other one? 4-3, 9-4-3. So we'll just move 9-4-1 up first. All right, recommendations before us, it's fairly lengthy. I believe we need to.
The Sapphire pit is the first item. And yeah, if it's as listed in the agenda, it is quite lengthy, but the intent is for council, the recommendation is for council to deem it to be.
Okay. Maybe we'll move for that, please. Councillor Bailey, Councillor, any questions or comments? Councillor. Okay, all in favor, see the business is carried. And I believe you said 9-4-3 is the next one, so I'm gonna move a second to receive that as presented in the agenda. Councillor Hirsch. Any questions or comments on that one? No, we're good. Favor. All right, that's it.
So yes, good reason we didn't make you sit around this quick. All right, so we are on to consent agenda. Oh,
Yes, so 9:42.
I don't have to leave the room, but I'm going to.
You know who our alternate chair is? Okay.
So I will go use the washroom.
Chairman should be on. Yeah.
Make sure we get that form too.
Yep. I'll go upstairs.
Or two.
We've got planners joining us. Jeremy. Yes. Okay, so is Jeremy presenting some of the amendments or? So I'm not sure, maybe he's prepared just a brief overview for council, so we could open it up to.
Hello, Jeremy. Welcome.
Hi, good morning.
So we have the report in front of us. Do you have an overview or a summary of any of the amendments?
Yeah, for sure. So as council may be aware, council approved the zoning bylaw amendment application and endorsed the draft plan of subdivision application with a list of condition to the County of Wellington. So since then, we have been working with the County of Wellington staff as well as the applicant on revising some of the conditions. The intention is to provide more clarity and flexibility for the owner in fulfilling conditions. So we have included in our report in table 1 a list of all of the recommended modification as well as the rationale for each of them. For the most part, the proposed modifications address editorial and administrative changes, except for one condition that we are proposing to add in, that is condition number 51. That is to deal with the unimproved portions of Main Street and Back Street and Ox Street that is connected with the subdivision. So the subdivision is connected to Main Street through an unimproved portion of the street. So the additional condition proposes will outline the responsibility for the owner to improve that street in accordance with the specification that the township engineering has, as well as to provide the township with a 1-foot reserve between the subdivision and the unimproved portion of Main Street. This is to ensure that no legal access would be able to be established until the township is satisfied that the improvement work has been carried out. And we also include a conditions requiring the owner to notify any future owner of lot 1 specifically of the above requirements and responsibility. Similarly, for the unimproved portion of Back Street and Main Street, we're also proposing to add in a conditions that outline the responsibility and the specifications that the township engineering has, as well as the requirement for a 1-foot reserve to also be established between the future public road within the subdivision and the unimproved portion of Back Street and Main Street. And again, this is to ensure that no legal access would be able to be established without the township being satisfied that the improvement work for Back Street and Main Street has been carried out. That is, that's an overview of the proposed recommended modification to the draft plan of conditions. I'm available to answer any questions that the council may have.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. So I'll start with Councillor Seboulis.
Yes, first of all, I'd like to thank staff for putting the revised version in red so you can see the changes rather than having to try and pour through both documents type of thing. So if you can do that for future stuff, that would be very much appreciated. One item, clause 29, council members, and you, I guess, or you received a letter from a resident, abutting, the future expansion of, Ox Road South type of thing. And they raised some concerns with respect to access. I was wondering if you can comment on that. Is that, adequately covered by clause 24-29, or should be there amendment, or, your thoughts on that?
Thank you. To the councilor Sepoulis, first of all, in the future, we will make sure that if recommended conditions are changed, we would highlight them in the appendix. And as to the question from the residents, I have had a chance to review the letter from the residents, and in my opinion, the current wording of the condition is adequate, as the intention for the condition is to be broad enough that all of the matters related to grading and retaining wall reconstruction of the street would be looked at comprehensively during the detailed design stage of the process. So I don't believe that adding or modifying the existing condition is necessary to ensure that to ensure that the issues about the access would be addressed.
Last question is, so staff, the fact that there's a new owner involved in this, does that change any of the processes, documentation that we have to worry about?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we were notified, and our planner might have some anything additional to add, but we were notified, and so legally, all of the requirements that were required for that title change have been provided to the township. We've updated our agreements for cost recovery, that sort of thing. And certainly going forward, anything registered on title or to the owner would reflect the new ownership change.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Swiggers?
Yeah, I really don't. I think I appreciate the track changes that Councillor Sepoulis noted. I think that was very clear from my perspective. Yeah, as long as all the resident concerns expressed have been addressed, which, correct me if I'm misspeaking, Jeremy, but I believe they have. I don't have any other concerns.
No.
Right, to the councilor, I do believe that all of the issue will be captured. And there would also be the owner would also be required to engage with a certain number of landowners adjacent to the road to discuss the redesign of the street. And the redesign would have to be reviewed and approved by the township. So we would make sure, staff would make sure that all of the design matters and issues would be captured and comprehensively addressed during the detailed design before we provide clearance for the conditions.
Based on that, I'm satisfied. Thank you.
Thank you. I was just gonna echo Councillor Sepoulis's concern about the one, not clause, number 29. So as long as you're satisfied that the wordings sort of works for what the concern was, then I'm okay with that. And yeah, any other comments before we let you go? Okay, so we need to move, what's the recommendation?
Yes, so it's that report COR 2026-002 entitled WDD Main Street Recommendation, and to recommendation to amend the draft plan conditions be received and the council approve the amended draft plan conditions either as presented or amended in accordance with attachment to Schedule A.
And so we're considering it as presented.
Correct.
For today. Okay, so can I get a mover for that? Councillor Hurst, seconded by Councillor Sepoulis, and all in favor. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Are we break?
Working break.
Or
Consensus is
is lunch? It is here. Okay, we break them.
We need to do it.
Yep. Yep. Okay. Just. Okay, we're gonna break for lunch. Be back. Going back.
so staff and attendees online are breaking for approximately 30 minutes. So we'll be back online for the remainder of the items at 12:30.
All right, welcome back, everyone. I believe we're on to the consent agenda. We get a resolution this way, folks.
So the consent agenda items listed for the January 21st, 2026 council meeting. be received for information.
Your mover, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Spools, any items be pulled out for discussion? Councilor Spools,
612, 614, 615.
right, anybody else?
6.1.1.
1.1 or 0.10?
I'm seeing 6.1.1,
The minutes, right?
the minutes, yes.
With your indulgence, Councilor Spools, I'll go to Councilor Bailey first, since it shows it numerically first. No worries. Right, so we'll receive the balance of those. All in favor? It's carried. Councilor Bailey, 6.1.1.
Yeah, just when reading through the minutes, I think it mentioned land acquisition, and I've heard from a resident and a couple of residents just inquiring about that, and so I was just wondering if staff could speak to the process of land acquisition, just so it's out there and everyone knows how that goes.
Yes, certainly. So through Mr. Chair, the township does have a policy around acquisition and disposition of land. So we certainly follow our policy as it relates to information that perhaps starts in camera and then as you rise and report out of camera to the public and what that process looks like. So certainly there is a confidential aspect of those negotiations that takes place in camera in accordance with our policy. Oftentimes when we are negotiating with other agencies, they have similar policies that set up the process for the disposition or acquisition of land. So we also have to be cognizant of their processes. But it is something that does come into the public realm through our working through whichever agency's process is applicable.
Okay, thanks for that. I think that's good clarification.
Okay, so we'll receive that one for information, 6.11, member Councilor Bailey, Spools, all in favor? Thank you. On to your items, Councilor Spools.
Sure, 6.12 municipality and another one, council resolution. This is a concern of a rural municipality that applied for a program called the Site Readiness Program. This is the province where they could pay up to $50,000 in any costs associated with getting sites ready. And what the province has said to the municipality, you don't have any water, municipal water or wastewater, and natural gas infrastructure, so you're not eligible. And that's going to be our predicament too. If we, as a municipality or industrial applicant wants to apply under this program, they won't have the opportunity because if they're we don't have the water and wastewater facilities. Natural gas we may have, but wastewater and water we won't have. So I think I'd like to support this. It's something that I think is a benefit to us as well if we ever get down that road. We got 2 properties that we are looking at classifying into rural employment lands, and we may be faced with, or whoever develops may be faced with not having ready certified site designation, which gives them offset financially to make it ready.
Okay. So moved by Councilor Spools to endorse that. Second, Councilor Bailey, questions or comments? Councilor Bailey?
Yeah, I had written down a very similar comment for this one. I said, although I wasn't clear on the particulars of the grant, the suggestion that rural municipalities without services wouldn't qualify does not seem fair. Unless, and I don't know if there are any other grants specific to municipalities without services. So that could be a suggestion, whether we support it or say, if you're not going to allow this, then perhaps, you can provide a grant that's for municipalities like ours.
I couldn't find anything else. It's basically it. They got it for labor force and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll support this as well.
Nothing to add. Good comments.
All in favor? It's carried. That's for 6.12. Next one, Councilor Spools.
Yes, this is the 2 late ads. One is the city of Guelph notice a study commencement public house on Victoria Road and Stone Road. They're looking at widening the road in this area. And the concern I have is what is the traffic impact on Busnich type of thing? Because if they're widening the roads, are they widening it to funnel more traffic down our roads or accept more traffic from our roads into the city?
So you want to do as a takeaway and
So through Mr. Chair, staff have been engaging with the city of Guelph on this. We also have our traffic consultant that's been participating in these meetings to bring up these concerns. the county of Wellington is also involved in that as well, just because Brock Road is their road. So we are bringing up those concerns and having those discussions. Obviously, our preference is to direct traffic accordingly to the major infrastructure, the Hanlon that's been put in. So we are having those discussions and making those requests.
That's great. So do we need a resolution from council or anything like that?
Do you, Mr. Chair? No, staff are working on this at a staff to staff level.
Okay, you bring back something where I can see.
Mhm.
Okay, the last one is county notice of open house and public meeting, OPA 131. A lot of the items relate to Post Lynch. The only comment I'm gonna ask the mayor be starting more feedback on this transfer of from another municipalities onto ours type of thing.
Yeah, I had a conversation with planning staff, county last Thursday after our planning meetings, and they're moving forward as presented prior. The allocation of rural growth from Erin to Post Lynch is not being modified at this time. That's not their intent. And the open house is going to occur. They have planning staff at the county have not received any change of direction from town of Erin council. So as far as county planning and staff and myself are concerned, it's status quo, carry on forward. Again, the public meeting is the 12th, right?
But we're at 5th.
The open house is the 5th and the meeting's the 12th. And people can attend both. You know, I am expecting residents from Erin to have some concerns. And I guess I would say I will keep council abreast of any change, you know, due to the outcome of that public meeting. I believe even if the allocation were to move back to Erin, because the county planning staff had proposed what we're proposing for our rural growth, I would suspect that we wouldn't change. They just don't feel comfortable having put it out to the public, you know, and then this 11th hour changing it, but until it's ultimately approved. Okay, that's a lot of them. So I got a recommendation to receive 6.14 and 6.15 for information. Councilor Schools, sorry. Questions.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I had a question first, but on that note, in the process so far, has the public had opportunity to comment on the OPA 131?
All public, Erin?
Yeah, like there is a public open house and the public meetings coming up, but there's been opportunity for, say, any Erin residents to have reached out to planning staff as before they've made this report. Has any of that been taken into consideration yet? Or
Yes.
Okay.
So, similar to Post Lynch, we've seen, you know, as the MCR progressed, we would have Sarah here and we would proactively provide resolutions. We were very much so engaged. Was there as much engagement from Erin as Post Lynch? I would say no. I say we're one of the highest engaged councils, this is paying dividends. The members of the public have engaged Erin Council. I watched Erin Council's meeting that they discussed the rural allocation and out of that meeting, they did not change their direction to their staff or county staff.
Okay.
So yes, there's been opportunity for them to engage. This February 12th is another opportunity for the Erin, all residents to comment, but.
So then my only comment was to make sure we're drawing attention to our public, that this is happening, because it'd be nice to get some engagement there. So I don't know if we could be putting this on our socials or what the plan is to promote this. It's an open house on the 5th and a public meeting on the 12th.
The open house on the 5th is virtual. And the public meeting is in person. I believe that's right after the planning meetings, 12th Thursday, I believe.
And the public meetings in council or in county
Chambers. Yeah. And I've been already spreading our people. The postage by design is in there. And the rural growth component is in OPA 131. So I've also been telling people that it's a good opportunity to submit comments. Or go ahead, you have the mover seconder for
I don't
that.
have a secondary yet.
Councilor Bailey or Councilor Hurst, so you would. Okay, all in favor? Carried. That was it for consents, right? Delegations are done. Public meeting, January 21st, 2026, 7 p.m. Public information meeting held in person at the municipal office, 7404 Wellington Road 34, and by electronic participation through Zoom regarding the 2026 proposed budget. All right, next item is 9.11. Jamie will present that.
Not that yet.
Afternoon. So this report is to talk about entering into an agreement with the Solicitor General for the fire protection grant. So here to answer any questions anyone has.
Or read the recommendation or is presented.
It is as presented, so it's to give 3 readings to the bylaw that authorizes entering into an agreement with the Ministry of Solicitor General for the fire protection grant.
Now you move it, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Bailey, any questions for the fire chief?
Good, thank you.
All in favor? It's carried. It's an easy roll. Easy.
Thank you.
Thanks. 9.2.1 interim property tax levy due dates.
Good afternoon, council. This is just our regular interim property tax levy and due dates report, just requesting that the township be able to bill these interim levies in accordance with the timelines noted in the report of February 27th and April 30th with those due dates. I'd be happy to answer any of council's questions.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, do you mind reading the recommendation, please?
Report FN 2026-01 entitled 2026 interim property tax levy and due dates be received, and that council gives 3 readings to bylaw number 2026-001 being a bylaw to provide for levy and collection of the 2026 interim tax levy.
Thank you. By Councilor Bailey, Councilor Hurst, questions or comments?
No, I don't have any questions.
All in favor? That's carried. All right. 9.2.2. This is Sam.
Yeah, so this is just our budget update report. It's clearly outlined what changes have been made to the budget from previous meetings, which were on October 22nd and December 17th. There is just one minor additional change that our CAO can discuss, which will be implemented in the final version of the budget upon council approval. But Ms. Hoyt Fox, if you just want to discuss that change, and then we can answer any of council's questions.
Certainly. So through Mr. Chair, we have been working back and forth to firm up a quote for heavy truck enforcement cameras. So we have a better picture at this time of what that full costing will look like. That includes the installation, our electrician, as well as the physical cost of the cameras and any data requirements that we need, as well as we look to implement it. So the full cost, the upset is 44,000. We are looking to fund that through, I believe, our technology reserve. So there's no impact to the proposed tax levy. And again, we're looking at that as an upset limit because we still are looking for quotes and perhaps we can get better costing than what we have at this point. In addition, we would be seeking that pre-budget approval from council today. So if we do get a good cost between now and the time that the budget is approved, that we would be able to move forward with that, given that there is no tax levy impact.
Okay. So Madam Clerk, you want to read the recommendation, please?
I'm just
Are you modifying it?
modifying it.
Oh, I didn't know it was being modified. I
No, that's
apologize.
okay.
So any questions on that? Councilor Spillier?
The numbers haven't changed from the previous. Is that correct?
Oh, yes, so that's correct. The final tax impact is currently sitting at 3.99% or $53 annually, or $4 per month for the median typical single family home. And this is what was discussed at the last meeting, December 17th.
I don't have any questions.
And can you just indicate the impact to the normal, like a farm property, please?
Yes,
We
so
have a lot of
that,
farm. So,
of course. Yes, so for the farm property, it's $14 annually, approximately $1 per month, and of course, again, the 3.99%.
thank you.
And this is just the township tax impact. The blended impact reduces all of that as well, so.
Okay, Councilor Bailey, anything?
I just had one little minor question, and it was more about trying to see how we can get a little more revenue from the rink board advertising or the baseball advertising. I wondered if there was any plan to do a little campaign. I mean, we're gonna be coming up to ball season. It'd be nice to be kind of pushing out, looking for people that wanna, put their sign on the baseball diamond fencing and get their ads out there. I wondered if we could look at maybe doing some little social media campaign or something out there.
So to you, Mr. Chair, I think that's something that we can refer to our recreation committee. I think they'd be great to make some suggestions on that in advance of that season.
Yeah, just because time's coming up for that.
Thank you, Councilor Hurst.
Nothing.
All right, so it's Justine on the hook. Are you
It's good now to read it. It should be updated.
That report FN 2026-002 entitled 2026 capital and operating budget update be received for information. And the council authorized preview budget approval for the heavy truck enforcement camera purchase to an offset limit of 44,000 to be funded by the information technology reserve.
Can I get a member, please? Councilor Hurst, Councilor Lewis, all in favor? Carried. 9.2.3.
Thank you. So this is just an informational report for council based on the 2024 Municipal Performance Measurement Program report and financial information report that was submitted. I'd be happy to answer any of council's questions.
You. Read the recommendation.
That report FN 2026-003 entitled Municipal Performance Measurement Program Report for 2024 be received for information.
Mover, please. Councilor Lewis, Councilor Bailey. Any questions?
Comment, I thank staff for putting together a list of the timing for the culverts and bridges. We're planning to undertake type of thing over the next few years. I noticed that there was a backlog, and I asked the question when a plan to be undertaken, and information was provided.
Excellent. All in favor? It's carried. There, it's done. 9.42. That was 9.43. Hold on a second. Yeah. Oh, yeah, right, I was out on that one. 3. Where are we? Community Service Human Resource with 971. Let's go. All right, is Ms. Heater sitting there or somebody else?
Through you, Mr. Chair, good afternoon. This report is the annual drinking water report that's presented to council in regards to our drinking water system as per legislation under the Ontario Water Resources Act. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Do you want to read the recommendation, please?
That report COM 2026-001 regarding the 2025 annual water report drinking water system number 260021034 be received for information, and that the 2025 annual water report be submitted to the ministry and applicable agencies. Outlined.
Okay, may we move, please? Mr. Hurst, any questions?
Well, it's all within spectrum.
Yeah. All in favor? That's carried. 9.7.2. Again.
Thank you. So this report is to provide council with an update on the Recreation and Community Wellness Advisory Committee's goals and objectives. Happy to answer any questions.
That report COM 2026-002 entitled Recreation and Community Wellness Advisory Committee Goals and Objectives Progress Report be received for information.
Mover, please. Councilor Hurst, Councilor Bailey, you, questions or comments?
Nope.
All in
To the
favor?
committee.
Carried. All right, 10.1 correspondence. Just gonna receive that for information. Can I get a mover, please? So Hurst, Councilor Lewis, any questions?
Our contributions stay the same, so.
It's straightforward.
Yeah, all in favor? That's carried. 10.2. Yeah. It's just for information, right?
Through the chair, so this is a notice of application for, emergency water for 6711 Laird Road. The original commenting deadline was today, but we have asked for an extension, to allow more time for review of the technical documents, so source water and staff will be preparing comments for council's consideration at the next council meeting. The extension is to February 16th.
We have in the past with streets like this objected. Under the premise of we need time to review, and I believe that was about Farge water taking over boundary of Guelph Hermosa. And that resonated, and then they released more documents, so. You said it was today or was it yesterday? Today. I would suggest objecting. Just under that same premise that until we have the chance to review versus an extension. I just think, your thoughts, council?
I like the idea of objecting. Again, this is for a 10-year permit. My thoughts initially was, well, in 5 years, you got the well in well coming upstream as well type of thing. So you want to be prepared in case something does happen. We could start getting problems with residential wells.
That's really.
Yeah, I wondered about the deadline. When is the deadline? I thought we sort of had whether it was a written rule, unwritten rule about objecting right away to most of these applications. So I'm in favor of doing that.
It's, Mr. Chair, I believe it is that's for ARA licenses that we have that direction. I'm not sure for permits to take water.
I think we should bring that back. There's a short timeline, 3-week windows of council meetings, unless, well, you know, it's just to get get them peer reviewed, so.
Just for clarification, is this this isn't a renewal? Yeah, so, currently, what information do we have information coming from this permit taker to the township on data and things like that in a good way?
Like a monitoring program kind of thing?
Yeah.
Let's look at the ARA license for that, and I don't think there is.
Mr. Chair, I don't believe there's a monitoring part of this particular property.
Okay, I just wondered if that was something that could be requested in the comments. Yeah.
Staff can take that away and ask. Well, to me, it's
self-reporting now, right? So you don't get any information.
Councillor Stanley.
Yeah, maybe just to piggyback on Councillor Bailey's comments, I think from my notes, we're just, were there any, the last time this went through, because it's a reissuance, were there any concerns expressed that were not resolved, or in this time frame that staff can go back previous iteration of this permit request to address that? But that would be my only comment. Like, I don't know if there are any, but it would just be a request of staff. But if it's in the works, then I'm good with that.
Do you need clarification?
I suppose the only clarification is, if I can put it in the motion, if council wants that standing objection to all permits to take water.
On the basis of time for peer review.
Yeah.
Just, I don't want them thinking we're just objecting to object. It's just we can't form an opinion until we get our peer reviews. You good with that?
Yeah, I'm good with that. The comments have the source water was typically looking at it still as well, so I think it's appropriate.
Let's be it.
Yeah, I'm okay.
That's right.
Care about it.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but when staff are looking at this, no, we should be considering requesting low water response criteria triggers for, you know, the old nesting waters. We want to put that in place. This one says it's a pond, so is it surface waters? Was it more applicable when there's a drought that they should be taking water? How is it refilled? I don't know. So just at least have the consultants take a look at that. It's not an issue, I'm fine, but this is the opportunity this comes in. Okay. Did you want to, is there an amendment you've made there?
Yes, so it's to receive for information, and the council directs staff to send an objection letter for the permit to take water renewal to allow adequate time for council and its consultants to conduct a review and submit comments. The council directs staff to submit objections to all permit to take water applications on a go forward basis to allow adequate time for review and comment.
Perfect. Do we have a number already? Please, Councilor Spillis, Councilor Hurst. Any last questions, comments? All in favor? It's carried. Yes, all right. I'll move on to Mayor's updates. Well, we all just returned from Roma, and I believe staff will be compiling our delegation material. We delegated to MNR for both Postwich and Tamil. And they went well. We met with Hydro One around their future transmission line construction. So yeah, I look forward to that. It was a good conference, I felt. Is there anything else going on? Okay, 131 we talked about earlier. Oh, yes, yeah, we can have that. We received Don McLeod's resignation from Tatwell. Was it January, early January? So kudos to Justine and Courtney who stepped up to the plate and organized the Tatwell meeting and the delegations and the newsletter with Alyssa. Oh, that's another one. Alyssa's on board. And anyways, and Alyssa is our communication specialist. What would you call her? I'm butchering that title, but
Advanced marketing and communication specialist, yeah.
so she's got a work plan over the next year to, build out Tatmos website better, have engagement through LinkedIn, through Facebook, start developing core data that other municipalities can take advantage of, have a section on the website that's for member login and just accessible to everybody. So really excited about having Alyssa on board. I think she's very excited to get going too. It's a new file. She's learning quickly. There's, as you all know, there's lots to learn. The board had their meeting. We discussed timing. So lucky for Courtney and Justine, the election for the executive was postponed once again. It was missed by our former executive director once or twice. So now we're at January with a municipal election on the horizon and the composition of the board likely to change. So we asked the board what they want to do. So left the executive in place, which thus means I'm chair, and Courtney and Justine are very excited to continue to provide support to Tatmel. These are duties assigned additionally to their normal duties. So essentially they're pro bono duties. So we're very appreciative that you saved us at Roma too. And it went very well. So thank you very much for that. We had a lot of great compliments from the mayors, deputy mayors, and councilors that attended the town conference. A lot of good questions and asked what direction and gave some advice. So at the end of the day, the membership wanted the executive director replaced sooner rather than, we were looking at like an 18-month window by the time an election, municipal election happened, and allowing that board to develop the criteria, job description, whatever it may be for an ED. I think there was consensus there that they wanted to move faster than not. So that we're going to be reporting back on some options. Mary Mead Ward of Burlington, big city mayors organization, had some recommendations we're going to investigate. So that's moving, and we have a meeting scheduled in March for Tamil, but it was also mentioned that if this executive director can be fulfilled sooner, then we would just call them sooner, which I think is only an earlier month maybe. But anyway, so the girls will be working on that in conjunction with myself. That's Alyssa. That's Don's resignation. He took a full-time CAO role with Central L. So he's doing that. You say something else I'm supposed to mention? No. Okay, let's take some questions on that.
To discuss Marston bypass.
With the delegations?
Yeah.
No.
We were unsuccessful.
We were successful with it.
Okay.
I will say that MPP Rasinski is a big advocate for the bypass. And I've said this to him directly. I said, I know, Joseph, you are advocating hard for that, and I appreciate it. He mentioned that the Minister of Transport did mention the Morrison bypass in a press conference release. It would have been late November, so that's good. It's getting mentioned by name. But Joseph is advocating on our behalf diligently. Are we on? When are we discussing the grant for beautification?
Not yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we won't talk about that, and, yeah, we weren't successful with MTO unfortunately, so. That's all I have. Okay.
I just had two things. One is I've been getting some feedback from residents on our fantastic winter maintenance lately. So I just wanted to pass on, thanks to our public works folks for doing that. And you can see how the service level's been really good. Second of all, Wellington County Safe Communities is doing a volunteer recruitment campaign. So perhaps I could share some of the correspondence coming. There's kind of a poster here, and maybe we can share it on our website and try to recruit some volunteers for Safe Communities.
Do you have any questions for my update?
Have questions about the update?
Good.
No, I was gonna say it was very well done. Like, I attended the TAPMO meeting and everything was very professionally done, well done.
It was good. They did a great job. I was teasing you because I
Presentation.
haven't had a mover and a seconder to receive my update.
Oh.
Move on to counselors' updates.
Sorry.
We can do them all together.
I guess we do them all
All
together.
in. Didn't have any questions.
I have a question.
Shoot.
Okay. Can you maybe just speak to like how TAPMO's membership has evolved over the past couple of years and kind of where you're at today or what future ambitions are?
So that was a major component of bringing on the executive director. One fold was to continue to increase our credibility clout with the provincial government, the industry as OSSGA and the counter that is TAPMO, hopefully. And that was part of the work plan of the executive director. I believe we only received 2 new members last year, Romera and I forget the other one. 2 is better than none. I would have hoped for more, but that's a big part of Alyssa coming on board as well. It's one of the common denominators I heard at the TAPMO meeting was communication. A lot of people don't know what we're up to, but again, that was the role of the executive director to start doing that. So we are maybe set back a little bit. The momentum is still there, and Alyssa will be pushing that out and hopefully gaining more members. So
No, that's good. That's always, whenever you lose an ED, it's always kind of like a half step back, especially in lean organizations where you don't have a huge cohort of staff to kind of, you're reassessing and moving forward. So I'm just curious how membership.
we did gain a couple. I feel we can do better, especially if once Alyssa gets, the website built out where there's the members login portal and we start having, whether it be development agreement templates, site plan notes, like here's the preferred wording for site plan notes around blending and processing. These will bring value and I hope we'll see more engagement. Very excited for that. So.
I have a question, Councilor Bentley, this Wellington Safe Community volunteer, what would their role be?
Sorry, just put something. It breaks it down into different areas of focus, but it's focusing on injury prevention. And then if you have any specialty that you want to be, assisting with, let's say you were passionate about fall prevention, then you could be joining the fall prevention kind of subcommittee for safe communities.
So this is community work as opposed to actual field work.
But it could be anything. So it could be if you want to be engaging with public, you can do that. If you want to be behind the scenes doing more. Yeah. So the poster is actually really good because I believe if you want to have volunteers come out, you need to tell them what you need help with. Because someone might be more comfortable doing behind the scenes work, someone might be up front, but it breaks down the different interests. So it's the road safety, falls prevention, accidental poisonings awareness, agricultural machinery and tool safety, mental health injury prevention, and sports and recreation safety.
Okay, so is this supposed to be on our website?
We can do that.
You can link, yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So
Just two minor last things. One, piggybacking Councillor Bailey's comments on the roads. Just my observation's been the township staff has done a really good job. I had a text from a resident at Concession One, like an unsolicited text, which you never get, is, hey, the roads are really clean during the last kind of push of snow. So certainly, I think when people go out of their way to acknowledge that, that's a good thing, because sometimes in this world you get the complaints, but you don't get the thumbs ups often. So just a compliment to the township staff. One question I do have, and maybe this is maybe more for Mr. Fowler, but it's pretty widely communicated in the media around like salt shortages and what that means to community safety. And can you maybe speak to what the township's doing to address this and what this all kind of means for the residents?
So through you, Mr. Chair, I might just let our director speak exactly to how he's managed the operations in light of the salt shortage. I know it's been last year as well as this year, so he might be able to speak to how we've sort of pivoted our operations to keep up. I can also speak to it if he's not available. And I can start, and maybe if he hears something that he wants to chime in with, that's all right. It has impacted our operations slightly, of course. And so we do use, we utilize the County of Wellington salt storage. So we have an agreement with the county where we purchase directly from them, and that just makes sense logistically because their storage yard is right next door. So there has been, additional plowing and clearing that we've needed to do. We do use sand, a sand salt mixture, if we need to, for the roads to help with the icy conditions. But we really have been dealing with it through just our operations and having folks out more often plowing the sidewalks, the roads, that sort of thing, trying to keep up in that way. I thought we did an excellent job over the Christmas holidays. It wasn't much of a holiday for our public works crew. I think they worked 12 days straight over the holidays to keep the roads clear for the community. So we have just been seeing a little bit of an impact operationally in terms of hours to compensate for the salt shortage.
Further to that, I talked to county staff and I about the salt shortage. And my belief was we've experienced it 2 out of 3 years. I thought it was 1 year, 2 years ago, then last year. Regardless, it's been repeating itself. And I asked what's the total tonnage of the county, and because they supply, I believe, for all of them as well. It's the amount of salt they use per year, 16,000 tons. And I said, okay, how big is a building do we need to build to hold 16,000 tons? Because I'm hearing, first I heard it was a labor disruption. So the union goes on strike in winter. They're not going to go on strike in the summer because their customers aren't affected. So it's more of a bargaining chip. That's a bold statement, but if I were running the union, that's what I would do. As a municipal leader, I want to buy our salt in August so that if there's a labor disruption in the winter, we're not affected. I also then heard they were loading the boats to go to the States before the winter was harsher, so the seaways were going to freeze up. So priority went to the boats. And anyways, end of the day, either way, we had no salt or very little salt. So I said about this, how much will it cost the county to build, something that we can put all the salt in August and then we just distribute it through the season. And what was indicated to me was that they have been building up their capacity for salt storage. They stored an additional 22 or 2,500 tons in Arthur at the new garage. And so then I stated to them, well, we have, unfortunately, the Aberfoyle garage, and I mentioned this to Mr. Fowler yesterday when we were chatting, the Aberfoyle garage, when I was first elected in 18, it was on the 10-year plans. So that would be 28. It's now pushed out 34, 35, somewhere in there. So it's moving out. And I said it to Joe that, if we're building these new garages, can we build in capacity to store salt? And he thought it was an interesting proposition. So I think we should ask county to come down here, or we could just, I don't know if we need them to come here to delegate about salt storage, but I would like us to put our comments together on what our thoughts are on requesting or supporting additional salt storage capacity through the county build out, because we are so very dependent on their ability to have salt. So,
That's helpful. I guess I look at it, yeah, you can take possession when possession's available and, it's the dollar cost averaging of like the cost of money over the period of time and what your potential storage is. But if they're building a new storage, that's the time to bump the capacity to 120% or 125 or whatever it happens to be.
So be assured that's the messaging I'll be taking forward with like the blessing of council, but I think that one's an easy one to say is just. But if you want a more official chance, then by no means can we can invite them down and to discuss it.
I'll leave that. I think more what I was looking at was just knowledge for residents to understand, the circumstances that exist within the municipality around road safety and what's being done to address that, given the salt shortages. And I think it's probably no great surprise to anybody, just as you noted, Courtney, 12 days straight, right? So there's obviously wage impacts to this, but also what's this mean? Because I think safety is your first priority, right? I don't think anybody would question that. So I'm hearing lots of really good things from the community around that, but also you see in like the popular media around not just this municipality, every municipality dealing with salt shortages. So I was curious what the strategy is moving forward, which the mayor's going to. So I'm not sure if Mike had anything to add to that, but the sample size of even just today, I think, has been quite positive within the residents.
Yes,
Yeah.
through the chair. I apologize there. I was just switching rooms so you didn't hear my stupid birds. I thank Ms. Hoyt Fox for providing the information. Yeah, I don't really have a lot more to add other than the fact that, we have discovered that, life can continue without a huge amount of salt. Sand being used along the crown still provides some melting. Not obviously the type of melting you would see with road salt, but stop signs, intersections, hills like that were treated all the time with sand salt mix, and we were successful in keeping the roads open. So don't really have a lot more to add at this time.
So, Mr. Fowler, you would be suggesting that we need more gravel pits for sand going forward?
Well, I'll suggest that we don't utilize our gravel pits. We'll haul from Caledon. How about that?
So through Mr. Chair, something else just that staff have on their radar, and we're working with the emergency management team at the county, highlighting that this is something that's very relevant, I think, from an emergency management perspective. How do we manage these sorts of shortages so we don't have to make declarations of significant weather events? How can we improve our preparedness on this? So we've mentioned it last year, this year again, it might be something to consider for an exercise with that group, just because it seems to continue that shortage across the province, which is really out of our government's hands. So something just that we're looking at from an emergency management perspective as well.
I think I'd also like to focus a little bit on the environmental component here. If we're able to be safely lowering our salt usage in the municipality and it's still working, that could have a big environmental impact in a positive way. So I don't know whether there's, a way we can be getting some feedback or data or how that's tracked, but I don't know what service level we have to put down so much salt, but I'd love to be able to talk about lowering the salt usage, still maintaining the safety component and for the environment.
So I will give you my perspective on it. If all municipalities are forced to not use as much salt, so I agree our roads were exceptionally maintained during this difficult period, but nobody else had salt, so their roads were that much worse. If we were to switch to using way less salt, just use sand, and then all the other municipalities still use straight salt, now you're gonna see bare roads coming into our roads that are now snow covered, but so it's all very dependent on the level of service the neighboring municipality is receiving. I don't disagree. Salt is problematic for the environment.
it starts with the parking lots and the sidewalks. That there's so many reports out there that they oversalt because of the liability and the litigation. The province should just create legislation that limits the amount that you can be sued for a parking lot or a sidewalk, and then we could save the environment a ton of salt. Anyways, so for the roads, I would just be cautious about, unless everybody adopts it, we would then have a different driving experience versus our neighbors. And I would maybe default to Mr. Fowler or staff to report back on that, but definitely worth investigating whether we can reduce our salt somewhat. As long as we still maintain that. I get so many positive notes about our roads, so.
A question, Mr. Fowler, are we using sodium chloride or magnesium chloride?
Through the chair, it would be sodium chloride.
Okay, I thought we were switching over to another salt component because it was more effective at lower temperatures and you had to use a lot less.
Through the chair, yes, I'd like to clarify that currently the county does utilize sodium chloride as the mineral, and the magnesium chloride is the application that is put on separately to the salt. That does increase melt time and it withstands lower temperatures for melting.
Well, that's what we use.
That is correct.
So the easy way to tell the difference is the salt is blue. Blue has been
Yeah,
treated.
and that's it's Councillor Bailey's point. That's a lot more ecological using magnesium chloride.
Maybe less, it lasts longer.
Exactly.
I would, is there a way we can reach out to county roads? And, not be a demand, but just say, ask them, we've had 2-3 years of salt shortage. Council is, wondering if there's going to be an increase of salt storage capacity and, build construction. And maybe they do come and talk to us, but I just don't want to be abrasive, like, because we're right in the middle of the storm. I just want to be, well, here, we want to put our weight behind it if.
Long-term visioning.
Yeah.
Alternatively, looking at using more of magnesium chloride, which has a lot more impact per quantity.
To you, Mr. Chair, there is a winter activity committee made up of staff that meets with the county, so that might be the best time to discuss it. I think they meet twice a year. So I'll put that in a notes to discuss with them at that roundtable. It's not just with the township, it's all with all the member municipalities.
Okay. That's good. We gotta go back to the mayor's update. The Burke was open for shooting hockey over the break for the kids. I thought it went well. I don't know if we kept track of numbers or not, so I was glad to see staff pivot towards that. And even looking at the schedule now for it, I see family skate for 4 hours straight on a Sunday. I think there's opportunity I like the heavy rentals because that's revenue, obviously, but I'd like to see some discussion around more shinning opportunities on the weekends. And just asking staff, I know a lot of this is getting into the weeds a little bit here, but will you be looking for feedback from council? Will you be adjusting the schedule? Even the holiday one for next year?
So through you, Mr. Chair, we do have that authority from council to adjust the schedule without coming to council, so long as it doesn't have budget impacts, but it is something that we can report on annually. Maybe suggestions in addition to the usage reports. And also we do have our recreation master plan coming up where we can talk about the usage and maybe underutilization of some of our facilities and how we can improve through scheduling. If I've missed anything, our director has turned the video on, so she's available as well.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's always great to have some feedback. I know facility staff does try to take estimated headcounts on participation at our events. And yes, the adjustment to the holiday schedule was very well received and highly attended. So increasing some more of those stick and puck and shinny programming, where maybe some of our underutilized programming is at this time is definitely something we can consider for next season's schedule.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, so we're gonna move in a second to receive the mayor and councillor updates. Councillor Hurst, Councillor Spillier, and for any more councillor updates, please or anybody, all in favor? That's carried. Bylaws, this first, I almost said White Fox.
That the following bylaws be taken as read 3 times. Finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2026-001 being a bylaw to provide for an interim tax levy for 2026 and collection thereof. And bylaw 2026-002 being a bylaw to authorize the entering into an agreement with the Ministry of the Solicitor General, Office of the Fire Marshal of Ontario for the Prevention Fire Protection Grant.
Your mover, please. Councillor Bailey, Councillor Hurst, all in favor? That's carried. Any announcements? Anything coming up? We have a meeting for Family Day? I was wondering that too, but yeah, it's you, so that's coming up.
I got one.
Shoot.
Taste of Italy, Friday, February 6th, put on by the Guelph South Rotary Club at the PCC. Proceeds go to Sunrise.
So
I'll be there.
I'll be there.
nice.
It's good food.
Okay.
Pasta loving child.
Any business arising from the closed session? Folks, motion. Any new business? Oh, I got a note. See that? She looks worried. Just thinking about the future and training for new council prior to inauguration. So municipal election is in May. The vote late October, and then usually inauguration is early December, and then it's boots hit the ground running. Like staff takes some consideration. The iteration of council doesn't change. Maybe it's not as necessary. Maybe it is a refresher, but I think it's very important if we have new members of council to provide some, I would call it high level. And what I'm thinking is planning applications. Here's the consequence if you vote against staff, vote for staff, or there's different scenarios with staff. IC, integrity commissioner stuff. There could be a list, but I think I don't think it needs to be a week-long thing, but a very high level and even, okay, here's your, I think the schedule that's already in the package, but anyways, like staff take some consideration into that training,
with our member municipalities, and we've put on training, like joint training in the past for candidates, so exactly that, anyone thinking about running for council. In the past, we've had our integrity commissioner, so John Scarin. Yeah, so we can talk with him to see about sort of what those offerings look like. And then of course, after the inaugural, there's a sort of whole slew of training for new members after they're elected, but certainly we'll take that away and work with our member municipality on like what that sort of candidate training can look like to really kind of prep and prepare anyone who's thinking about it.
I'm fine with you not doing it if what, the candidate training covers it, but I was thinking more specific to, the decision-making at your council, but not too far in the weeds, but I'll leave it with, it's just a thought with new members, because I remember when Jessica and I came on, the learning curve was so steep. It's a lot, so it's not really. Okay, that's all I have. All right, confirmatory bylaw, Madam Clerk.
That the following bylaw be taken as read 3 times and finally passed in open council. Bylaw 2026-003 being a bylaw to confirm proceedings of council for the corporation of the Township of West Lunch at its meeting held on the 21st day of January 2026.
Can I get a move for that, please? Counselor Phelan, Counselor Hurst. All in favor? Carried, and adjournment is 1:35. We're second, Counselor Spillis. Counselor Hurst, all in favor? Carried.